morning from all over the place. We have loads of folks involved in the call. Special thanks to Dr. Hirasuna for being with us and presenting. Also thanks to Zoom for enabling us to pull this off. It's wonderful to have their support for this.
Here now?
Yeah, you can go ahead and share, Dr. Hirasuna. That would be fine. Just an additional reminder again that we are recording this session for sharing later. So sit off camera if you're not supposed to be recorded.
Is everyone seeing the title slide?
Got it. So let me do a quick round robin of audio and video check. In Texas, can you unmute and introduce yourselves quickly, please? Give us a wave when you do. Texas, are you there? Ah, there he is.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah, we're here.
Okay, thank you very much. And then if we could, Bangladesh, are you able to hear us and can we hear you now? Okay, I think he must be having trouble with his microphone, so we're going to go to Ellicottville. If you could unmute, say good morning, good afternoon, or good night, whichever it is, and introduce yourselves, that would be great.
We can hear you very well.
We gotcha. Excellent. A little closer when you use your microphone would be great. Thank you. And then to Croatia, to Zagreb. Can you unmute and introduce yourselves, please?
Yeah, we're here.
Wonderful. We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Say something.
And we're what?
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Zagreb Private School for Vati. Nice to meet you today.
Thank you, thank you. And then we will go to Taiwan, Affiliated High School. Can you unmute and make sure we have audio and video from you, please?
All right.
Hello, everyone. It's 11:30 p.m. in Taiwan now.
And we are students from Affiliated High School of Zhangxin University
in Taiwan.
Hello.
Hello, yay.
Wonderful, welcome. Thank you very much. Good to have you here. And last but not least, we're going to go to Chautauqua Lake. If you could unmute and introduce yourselves, that would be wonderful.
Howdy, we're Chautauqua Lake from Western New York. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Good to see everyone here.
Thank you very much. All right, Dr. Hirasuna, that completes our round of audio checks and leaves it all to you that we are set and ready for your presentation. Thank you very much for being here with us, and we look forward to this.
Okay, let's get started. Welcome everybody, and good morning or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located. I'm going to talk about climate change, solutions-oriented talk. And my name is Tom Hirasuna. I'm located in Ithaca, New York, actually the same city that Rene Carver is located. And I see that there's a group from Western New York here, so we're not that far apart. A quick the Reality Project, it's a group of climate advocates that were established by former Vice President Al Gore. And recently, back in November 20th, we had an event called 24 Hours of Reality. And what Al organized was that his goal was to have 1,000 sites worldwide giving live presentations about the climate crisis. And it turned out we had 2,000 presentations. And I was one of them. I gave 2 presentations in the Ithaca area. And Rene saw the presentation and he invited me to speak to you today. So this presentation is based a little on what I said there and it's updated a little bit. And I tried to slant it more toward the audience today. You may recognize this photo. It was taken from the Apollo 17 spacecraft, which was the last mission to the moon. And the lighting was just right that they could take a nice picture of the Earth. And one significant thing about this photo is that it changed the way that humanity thought about our common Earth. And it reminds us that we are all connected. Notice there are no boundaries between the countries. We're all together on this island in the sky, and our actions have impact on the entire planet, and it affects everyone. We're not divided by continents. Everything affects everybody else. So if you're down on Earth and you look up and you may think, wow, the sky is really big and limitless. But from this photo taken from the International Space Station, it's important to see here that not limitless as is looked from the ground. As noted by the late Carl Sagan, if you look at the size of, on a scale, a classroom globe, if you put a layer of shellac on that globe, it's a very thin layer of varnish, that's about the approximation of how thin the planet is, the atmosphere to the planet. So I'll go briefly through how things warm up on the Earth. We have solar radiation coming in as light waves passing through the atmosphere, and a lot of it's absorbed by the Earth. Some of it is reflected, and then we have the layer of atmosphere that traps the radiation and keeps the Earth warm. And if you look at Earth relative to the other planets, and the warming of the Earth or the temperature depends on how far away you are from the sun and also the atmospheric conditions. If you look at the Earth, Venus, and Mars, for example, the Earth has a surface temperature about 15 degrees. Mars has a thin atmosphere, it's minus 65, it's very cold. Venus has a very thick carbon dioxide atmosphere, and the surface temperature is well over 400 degrees, and this is warm enough to melt lead or tin. And it's not only the distance from the sun. You see Mercury is a little closer, but it's not as hot as Venus. So what we want is, we don't want to go the path of Venus. We want to keep Earth so that we can still live here. Venus had a runaway greenhouse effect, and now nothing lives there. We are now spewing a lot of pollution every day. There's 142 million tons of man-made global warming pollution every day, and it's treating the air like we're an open sewer. So we notice this will increase the atmospheric layer, and it will increase the greenhouse effect. So I'm going to bring up 3 questions about climate change. Must we change? How bad is the situation now? And I hope after this talk you'll agree that the answer is yes. Can we change? Do we have the technology in place that we can make changes? And I'll review some of this, and the answer will be yes here. The 3rd question is actually the key one. Will we change? And I'm hoping that after you hear this talk, you're encouraged to make changes yourself and try to get other people to come along with you, because we all need to change. So first, must we change? The largest source of global warming pollution is the burning of fossil fuels. And this trend is going along the x-axis, is from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and we see a big accumulation in metric tons of carbon. It's just a huge increase. And right now it's being released into the atmosphere faster than any time in the last 66 million years. This is a plot of CO2 concentration going back about 800,000 years until just about the the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And we'll notice that the carbon content is in parts per million. It fluctuates, and this is the normal fluctuations. And you also notice that the temperature will follow pretty closely to the carbon dioxide concentration. And included in these are some of the ice ages that preceded us. I'm going to expand the scale here on the left side. James Hansen, who's a noted climate scientist, had said that 350 parts per million CO2 is about the limit where it is not visible changes are uncomfortable that we have to change our way of life. So you heard of the organization 350.org, and they're sort of basing that number on this 350 parts per million CO2 that was suggested by James Hansen. However, in recent times, we shot past that, and our current concentration has gone over 400, we're at 415. If we go up at the same rate, after 40 more years, we're going to hit 600 parts per million, and that's over 3 degrees of warming. So we have to change the trend, or else we're going to go on this path, and it's not a trajectory that we want to see. Another way to look at things is going back to a period about 1951 to 1980. We have a nice distribution of the temperatures at sort of average temperature, cooler than average, warmer than average over the summer. And we have a nice curve. And we'll put a reference here and notice the definitions of where the white is the average temperature, the blue is cooler, and red is warmer than average. And we're going to show how things are changing over time. As we go to 1983 to 93, it shifted over, and you notice that there's a new category here, extremely hot, that's formed. Go further along, 94 to 2004, this extremely hot region is getting bigger. And today, we're way hot now. The extreme temperature events cover 14.5% as opposed to 0.1% as they were back when we first started this curve. Another way to look at it is a departure from mean temperature. And you see that the temperature has gone up about 1 degree C. So right now we're seeing the effects of a 1 degree rise in temperature. If you look at a trend of the hottest years, 18 of the 19 hottest years have occurred since 2001. And the hottest of all have been the last 5 years. They're saying 2019 is the second hottest now, so it's fitting the trend also. If you look at this past summer, we had all sorts of high temperature records. Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, France, Netherlands, England, Scotland, all broke their high temperature records between July 24th and 25th. And you may have heard that July 2019 was the hottest month ever. And in 2018, we had 224 locations set all-time heat records. Even places where you don't expect to be warm, in Alaska, you have all-time heat records in July, and temperatures almost high 80s, 90 degrees. By the Arctic Ocean, Siberia, we had temperatures higher than normal at 40 degrees. This is near the Arctic Ocean, so you wouldn't expect it to be this warm. And above the Arctic Circle, we had a temperature reaching 35 degrees Celsius. And the North Pole has experienced midwinter heat waves 3 years in a row, and we'll see if 2019 winter is the same. It probably will be. And we're noticing that the Arctic ice is melting, and there's a big drop in the Arctic Sea ice extent just very recently. If you look at this diagram, you want to focus on the very bright white, which is the old ice, is sort of represents the more permanent ice. And as the time progresses, the white portion is getting smaller. So you look at 1984 and 2016, most of that white ice has disappeared. And it's gotten to a point where part of the Arctic has transitioned from a carbon sink to a net carbon emitter. And you hear about permafrost melting and methane being released. Now, the noise is the wind, actually, but you'll see there's this methane bubble that is shown, and it's quite striking just from the permafrost melting and methane being released. And this is all, methane is 10 times as bad as carbon dioxide in terms of being a greenhouse gas. And we're seeing all sorts of ice melting in Greenland. And also down south in Antarctica. 2018 was the warmest year on record in Antarctica. And you sort of see, this diagram just sort of shows ice sheet velocity, how it moves. And looking at Antarctic ice loss, it's gone way up. And as a result of the ice melting, the sea levels are rising. And looking ahead to the top cities by population in 2070, which are at risk. And this is a worldwide problem. And some of these cities may be near to you.
Actually, number 3 there, Dhaka, we have students from that location on the call right now, Dr. Harrison.
Okay. And the one closest to me is Miami. This one is by population. In terms of economic impact, we have it this way, and Miami is the top, but there are other U.S. cities, like New York is in the list. And it's pretty striking. And the ice continues to melt. It's actually melting at a faster rate than they had predicted in the past. And there's one example of Japan. And just from 3 degrees warming, the blue will show where a sea level rise will inundate the area. So the ocean had been acting like a sponge, absorbing heat and carbon dioxide to regulate global temperatures, but it can't keep up. And the consequences are severe for humanity. So the heat content has been going way up. A lot of the warming has been going into the oceans, and it's showing up a lot more and a lot deeper. And half the increase has occurred in the last 20 years. Again, another representation showing the difference from a mean. And again, we're way up, and it keeps trending higher. With the ocean warming, we have an impact on hurricanes. The warmer oceans lead to more intense hurricanes. And we get the hurricanes intensifying much more rapidly. And we have warmer air, so it holds more moisture, and it leads to heavier downpours. And we'll get more storm surges that accompany due to the sea level rise. And the hurricanes aren't moving as much because the jet stream has been affected. It's called wavier. What do we mean by that? It used to be that the jet stream was roughly constant, but now there's a lot of shifting around. You notice that they can't predict the weather as well as before because things have changed. So you notice that there is not a constant path where the jet stream has been. So you may have heard of Hurricane Harvey, which hit Houston, and what it was, it intensified so quickly because of the heat, but then it lingered around the coast of Houston for a very long time and actually stayed there for several days. And if you look at this video for August 24th, 25th, 26th, and it's just staying right in that area, dumping rain on the population of Houston and surrounding areas. And because of the heat, it was a tropical depression as it approached, but then it intensified to a Category 4 hurricane in just 2 days. And it was the first recorded storm in the Gulf of Mexico to intensify 12 hours before landfall. And a nearby town received 5 feet of rain, the record for US. And Michael Mann, who's a climate scientist at Penn State, says, you know, you'll probably see many more Harveys in the future. And you've heard of Hurricane Dorian over the Bahamas. It also stayed there for a long time. And I could go on and on, but I think that's enough examples to make the point. What we're seeing is the hydrological cycle, and where you have evaporation, precipitation, water returns, and evaporation again. But because the temperature is higher, you're getting more evaporation and more precipitation. Just the intensity is higher. As the temperatures increase, the oceans evaporate more and you get more moisture. And you can get a lot more water vapor that's held. And with each additional 1 degree of temperature, the atmosphere can hold 7% more water vapor. And there's already 5% more water vapor than only 30 years ago. The downpours will get bigger. This is Ellicott City, Maryland in May of 2018, a flash flood. And it's quite striking. So globally, floods and extreme rainfall events occur 4 times more often than in 1980. And we're noticing a large increase in numbers of record-breaking precipitation anomalies. And just extreme weather, we have storms, have floods. I'll be talking about the droughts and fires next, but it's just increased just since 1980. And economic losses from extreme weather totaled $653 billion over the past 2 years alone. And these events have displaced 7 million people in the first half of 2019. So if you look at the land part, because of the intensity, we're evaporating more water from the land, so things are getting drier. So we're seeing severe droughts. 97% of Iran had a severe drought in 2018. It's an example of Lake Kuzhal in India, June 2018. It's the same place 1 year later, the water's gone. In Central America, there's area known as the dry corridor is a drought affected area. And these are Honduras and Nicaragua, which have been ranked #1 and #4 in the Global Climate Risk Index. And it's affecting the amount of food that people can grow, and you see a lot of climate instability, and you have people moving. And we could see up to 1 billion climate migrants just because they can't have food where they're living now. And then you'll have places, again, where you don't expect it to be warm. Up in Greenland, you have fires. This is July 2019. In Russia, also July 2019, lots of fires there, estimated 12 million hectares. And typically hotter years have more fires. Again, an increasing trend from 1980 to now. And since 1972, the average area burned each year in California has increased 500%. And you notice this is from a person in Australia, is sort of foreboding. This is an omen, if you will. Fire weather has never been as severe this early in spring, but it's burning now. So global systems are vulnerable to climate. We talk about food supply, water, and global health. There may be a threshold of global warming beyond which current agricultural practices can no longer support large human civilizations. And how does climate change affect food supply? In various ways, and they're all interrelated. And we could spend a lecture on each of these effects, but I'll talk about a couple of them here. First on heat. Crops are actually sensitive to heat. They don't grow as well, and it affects their nutrition. And these are effects on corn, wheat, rice, and soy. You have a yield decline for each degree of warming. And these 4 crops make up 2/3 of the human caloric intake. And for every day during the growing season, point, the yields decline by 0.7%. And you're having an overall effect from heat stress alone. For nutrition, you have reduced levels of nutrients in rice, wheat, soybeans. Almost everything is affected. And you also see a decrease in minerals. Talk about water. So if you look at global water use, it's about 12% domestic, 19% industrial, and a large proportion is for agriculture. How does climate change affect water availability? It affects the supply, it's a reduced supply, and it increased demand. And again, everything's interrelated. So as temperature rises, so does water use for people, crops, energy, industry, and animals. And water scarcity already affects more than 40% of the world's population. And you look at different countries, increase in annual water demand. For global health, Climate change is the biggest global health threat in the 21st century. Again, folks, and they're all interrelated. So extreme heat events cause more deaths annually in the US than all other extreme weather events combined. And you see, it's a worldwide problem. You have pollution, deaths per year due to pollution. And allergies will be much worse. I have allergies myself, and I've noticed my response to allergens more because of the temperature. You see tropical diseases on the move. And a lot of things that you weren't worried about before just because things are moving farther north. The Zika virus or dengue fever, you hear about these. Mosquitoes move to higher latitudes and higher elevations. And mosquitoes are big carriers of a lot of these diseases. And we also see an increase in waterborne infectious diseases. And you also see there what are known as ocean dead zones, where they're measuring low concentrations of oxygen. And these have been increasing over the years. You see populations of marine vertebrates declining. And you see animals and plants moving northward at about a rate of 4.5 meters per day. And we're at risk of losing a lot of land-based species in this century. So carbon is expensive, no doubt about it. And for the younger folks, if you don't recognize that, that's sort of an old cash register. And unfortunately, the poorest people are the ones that suffer the most from all these problems. So must we change? I think you agree that the answer is yes. We'll go on. Can we change? We have the solutions at hand. For wind, globally, wind could supply worldwide electricity consumption 40 times over. And if you look at wind capacity, it has just grown from 1980 to present. It's taken off. And costs have come down. The costs of onshore wind. And you even have some utilities offering free electricity at night because the wind energy is so abundant. So there's enough solar energy reaching the Earth every hour to fill all the energy needs for a full year, and we just have to capture it. So we look at the projections and how they compare with reality. So we actually exceeded this goal by 17, and then 2018 it was exceeded by 109 times. And you see the solar PV installations just taking off. And we also have the cost of the modules coming down, which contributes to the increase in installations. So pricing, we see there's a very low price, 2.4 cents per kilowatt hour in Nevada. So in 2014, electricity from solar and wind was about 1% of the world. 2019, now it's the cheapest source in about 2/3 of the world. And going forward, these will be the newest sources of energy in the entire world. So more than 2/3 of the global population live where solar and wind are the cheapest sources of new bulk generation. And you look at investment in new generating capacity, 2019 it was about even, and now you see that the new investments are going toward renewables. And also new capacity just keeps going up. And people talk about nuclear, but in proportion to the amount, it'll be small. We look at China, the new electricity capacity, 53% was from solar and wind. In India, 65% of new capacity was from solar and wind. And we'll look at installed capacity is forecasted to go way up in 2030. 500 gigawatts renewable energy capacity in place by 2030. And if you look at the capacity additions, renewables are overtaking coal. And we're getting effect on pricing, 2.44 rupees per kilowatt hour. And they aren't investing in coal anymore. Look at Europe, 88% of new capacity of some solar and wind. And the UK generated 6.5 times more energy from renewables than from coal in 2018. In the US, 49% of new capacity was solar and wind. You can also see the domination of gas here, and hope will be changing the trend in the US. But we also see that solar energy jobs have grown 6 times faster than the overall economy. Along with solar energy, we want to, well, the sun is only in the day, and we have to increase storage capacity of the energy that we gain during the day. So we'll notice a historical trend in storage capacity has been going up and is projected to go up way, way higher. And accordingly, the pricing is coming down. And you have somebody from one of the utilities in Indiana saying he's really surprised how dramatically renewables and storage have beat natural gas. With the reduced size of batteries and capabilities, they're seeing more electric cars. And it turns out that around 2023, we expect the price comparison that electric cars will be cheaper than the fuel-powered cars. And you have different countries aiming for different goals in electrifying their cars. So you have countries that have announced fossil fuel vehicle phase out. And then you see a lot of the auto manufacturers moving to manufacturing electric vehicles. And even General Motors is saying they believe the future is all electric. We see forecasts and buses becoming electric. And you have cities committing to getting only zero emission buses. Okay, is there any precedent for such a rapid adoption of a new technology? So we're talking about, it's a drastic change to go to all these renewable sources, but there's a case where things have happened. We're talking about cell phones. In 1980, AT&T commissioned a study to forecast cell phone use by the year 2000. They projected 900,000 users. And the actual figure was 120 times higher, 109 million. And now there are 9.2 billion cell phone connections. And why were they wrong? Way wrong with the projections. You have the factors. The costs dropped sharply, quality improved. We had low-income nations with no landline grids leapfrogging the old technology. If you look at a graph, you have the increase of cell phones in developed countries, but then you add on the developing countries, and it just took off. A revolutionary amount of change in the cell phone industry. So can we change? Answer is yes. The more important question now is, will we change? And I hope to convince you to take action. We've heard of the Paris Agreement. Every nation in the world agreed pretty much to achieve zero greenhouse gas emissions by mid-century. But unfortunately, the President of the United States is wanting to pull the US out. But the US cannot legally withdraw until one day after the 2020 presidential election. And one of the financial services sort of looked at the effects, and I'm not going to read this out, but they're saying that regardless of who occupies the White House, the persistence toward green technology is going to persist. You'll see the trend of coal plants. You have proposed coal plants that were defeated. You have retired coal plants, and you have those announced. So we have a lot of, a big reduction in coal plants in the US. Coal consumption has finally come down. And you have a lot of global financial institutions announcing they will stop financing coal-fired power plants. And you have the Powering Past Coal Alliance, a group of countries taking action to accelerate clean growth and climate protection through a rapid phase out of coal power. And then you have 24 states representing the United States Climate Alliance. And you have communities that are committed to 100% renewable energy. And you have a few that are already there. And we have many global companies that are a commitment to going 100% renewable. And you may recognize a lot of the logos here, but there's a definite trend taking off. So what can you do? One main thing is to vote. This problem is so urgent that we need the governments to be involved, and they have the power to, for regulations and to pass laws to move at the speed we need. And we should have a carbon tax, and it becomes a way to motivate the clean economy. You give the proper value to the resources that we're using, which haven't been accounted for in the past. And it will change the way companies do business. Now, actually, here's the homework assignment for you. This is a valuable reference that everybody should be familiar with. This is a Project Drawdown, and there's also a website, so you could go there as a start. And what they did is they talk about 100 current solutions that could be used toward drawing down the carbon dioxide level. And for each solution, they did an analysis of what it could cost to increase this, what kind of savings they would get, and the impact on the carbon dioxide level. So be sure to look up Project Drawdown. And it's identified many important sectors that were important to reducing CO2, food, energy, land use. What women and girls means is sort of having women more involved in their own careers, and the fewer women that are working, and there'll be fewer children produced. It affects the population growth. And then there are other categories: materials, buildings, transport. And the top 5 are refrigerant management, wind turbines, reduce food waste, plant-rich diet, and tropical forests. Now, on the local level here where I live in Tompkins County, there is a website that helps you getting to consider new ideas. And as a second homework assignment, take a look at this and see if you can find something in your own communities or set something up that the community could use. On Get Your Greenbacks, in the people category, what they'll do is they'll give you pointers on how to get to learn more about different aspects of things you can do, and sort of give you a start. So for example, on the website, they have all these icons, and it covers fuel efficient cars, energy efficient homes, recycling, going solar, all these different categories. And you would click on these icons and you'll start getting information on how you can take action in all of these. So if you set something up like this in your own towns, it'll be a way for people to get started. And this would help reduce your own carbon footprint. So be open-minded, consider new ideas, aim for carbon neutrality, reduce your own footprint, and when you can't, buy offsets. And offsets, you sort of pay money to these global efforts where they fund research to take care more of the carbon dioxide problems. So there are a lot of organizations around where you can get offsets, and these organizations will in turn fund projects. One thing you have to be careful about, there are a lot of scams going on and they sort of impersonate a real fund. So make sure that it's a good fund before you give them offsets. Now, we had mentioned being vegetarian and drawdown, and one part of this is that to make a pound of meat, it takes like 10 to 20 pounds of plant material. Already there's a loss. If you're spending a lot of land and resources toward making meat, but if that were converted more toward plants, you're already reducing the demand. And also there's a lot of food waste going on. We need to waste less. Try to use more of the food rather than throwing in a landfill. Be aware of what's going on in your community. For my example, there's the Ithaca Green New Deal, going from the bottom up. In New York State, we have the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act. And then in the US, there's a Green New Deal in Congress right now. In your own countries or communities, there may be something going on, but become aware of what's going on in your community. Become acquainted with the reports issued by the UN. You may have heard about the 1.5 degree report, which was came out in October 2018. And this is where you heard the only 12 years left, but that was a couple of years ago now, 10 years left. We want a 50% reduction by 2030. And the report also made the case that 1.5 degrees is way better than 2 degrees, which had been a previous target, but we're still way worse than 1 degree. The Climate Change and Land Report talked about how the way we're using land now is actually worsening climate change. We could have land used better as a carbon sink, reforest, adjust the way we use agriculture. And there are other technologies that will get energy, like biochar. You'll burn the wood, but put the char back in the ground. So you keep the carbon in the ground. And then very recently, we had a emissions gap report from the UN Environment Program. This is just in November. And it's saying that the Paris Agreement is not enough. If we follow the Paris Agreement, we're still going to have a rise to 3.2 degrees in the century. So we have to, in order to get the 1.5 degrees, we need a reduction of 7.6% every year between 2020 and 2030. And your third homework assignment is to look for an organization that you can get involved with. There are a lot of organizations around. I'm with the Climate Reality Project, and I'm also in the Citizens Climate Lobby, but a lot of youth are involved in the Sunrise Movement. This is a group that organizes a lot of the climate strikes. Seek out a group to get active with. So join others who are using their voices, their votes and choices to fight the climate crisis. And we can, and we will solve the climate crisis. Your world depends on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hirasuna. It's
stop sharing so you can switch back.
Yep, I was very depressed in the first half of your presentation and actually felt a little bit of hope during the second. Let's get right into questions from student sites. A reminder, we're gonna start with Texas. I will check again with Bangladesh to see if they're on, but if we could go to Texas first and then we'll try Bangladesh, and after that, Ellicottville. Go ahead, Texas.
Hi, my name is Solandra Silva, and I just want to thank you so much for taking your time out of your day and speaking to us about such an important issue. So the first question I had was, what got you interested in climate change?
Okay, actually, I'm a chemical engineer by training, going way back. And back when I was in school, a lot of the stuff we learned in class was about petroleum engineering and hydrocarbon use. And I hadn't realized that there was a problem until Inconvenient Truth. This is the movie that Al Gore put out, and it's about maybe 12 years ago now. But that movie opened my eyes and how bad things were. And then it's obvious that the government's going to take action on this. And then 10 years later, Al Gore reduced Inconvenient Sequel, and pretty much nothing had been done. At that point, I decided I have to get involved myself. So I got involved with the Climate Reality Project and got trained as one of their leaders, which lets me provide lectures like this. All of the slides pretty much come from the Climate Reality Project, except for the ones at the end, which I made up for the local area. But all of the fancy slides come from Climate Reality Project. Does that answer your question?
but thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. We're going to try to get back to you right now. I'm going to see if I can allow Bangladesh to talk. So hopefully that gets us, let's see, Bangladesh, I have you in there twice. Can we hear you now? All right, we're having some issues with his microphone still, so I'm going to mute Bangladesh. And instead, let's go to Ellicottville, and after Ellicottville, we'll go to Zagreb, Croatia. Go ahead, Ellicottville. Ellicottville, I'm not sure your mic is actually powered on. We're not hearing you. It may have powered off while you were waiting. You guys keep trying at Ellicottville and chime in whenever you can. And we're going to go instead to Croatia. Go ahead, Croatia. Do you have a question for Dr. Hirasuna?
Yes, thank you so much. It was really amazing, and thank you for invitation to be a part of this great event. And of course, we have a question. Adi, please.
Yes, I'm Aditya Devraj, and I wanted to ask, what would you do? I bet you've heard of the Australian fires, and what would you say would happen in 1 year's time? Would the fires continue? Would the temperature be higher or lower? And I just wanted to say I'm actually from India, and I'm happy to see how it's all working out and becoming better.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the fires will get even worse and more frequent in more places than they are now. So people need to wake up and take action.
True. Yes. Any other questions? No. Thank you. Yeah, Adi is very happy that India took lots of things
In consideration.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you, Croatia. And with that, we're going to go to Taiwan.
Yes.
In your slide, you mentioned about the women and girls take part in the drawdown of CO2 for 12%. Can you explain more about that? I haven't realized it.
And also, does your data that you just present available?
I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat?
Okay, first.
Okay. And why do women and girls take 12% in the drawdown of CO2?
Okay. Yeah, a lot of that, well, population growth is a major issue. As the population grows, the resources get taxed more. And a lot of it is awareness of women or the society allowing women to take an active role in their own development rather than just growing families. And it's found that when the awareness for women is more, then accordingly the population is lower, and they also make an impact on improving the location, the economies, and it actually has an impact on the carbon.
Is it accurate to translate that the more women know, as women know more about the crisis, they have a more positive impact?
Well, it's also as they know more in general, the more educated they are, and they become more toward careers and doing more other work besides just working in the home and raising large families. But these are based on statistics, And I think it just came out, it was a surprise to them when they did the study. But actually, think about it, it's not a surprise. But I suggest going to Drawdown because all of these 100 different areas are covered in detail. And each of these are available now. They have another section on coming attractions, which are future technologies, but the 100 they talk about and do the analysis on are already available.
Here are some more questions.
Hang on just a minute. I'm going to come back to you. We are at 11:30, which was our advertised stop time. So just in case the folks at the BET show in London need to leave, I wanted to say thank you again to Zoom for sponsoring this and for helping us out to make this possible. We really appreciate that. And if you're in London and you're leaving us, thank you for joining in. We're glad you could participate. And now, if I can go back, anybody else that needs to leave at 11:30, we totally understand. That's how we had advertised it. I believe Dr. Hirasuna is able to stay longer. I am certainly willing to stay longer.
So, but
So,
if you have to go, thank you for coming.
okay, with that, let's take the second question from Taiwan, and then we will go to Chautauqua Lake.
Okay, does your data that you just present available?
Could you make your slides available or these information available?
The session is getting recorded, so I think that will be available. The slides are for use for the climate reality leaders, so they're not really available. But there are also a lot of climate reality leaders worldwide, and you can request presentations. So if you have a group that wants to hear a presentation, you would go to, you can actually request a presentation from Climate Reality Project. And all of us have access to the slides.
Thank you. That's excellent.
Yeah, well, I will be sharing with the interactive presentations with anybody that I'm aware of on the call. I will be sharing the link with later, so you'll be able to review the video and see all of the slides. With that, we're going to go to Chautauqua Lake, and then we'll try going back to Texas for another question.
Hello, my name is Owen, and I was wondering what we could do as teenagers to help the environment.
Well, you see, Greta is a teenager and she's doing a lot. And find a group of interested students. Sunrise Movement is probably a good place to start if you can find a group in your area, or go to their website. And if you don't have a group in your area, you can start one.
Yeah, I would also encourage you. You have the sites that Dr. Hirasuna mentioned. Get your greenback and drawdown.org. Those are great ones to go to see what suggestions those groups have. Those are great places for you to start. I would also encourage you from that, look at engaging with the adults in your community to find out who else is doing things and what impact you can have with your peers around you. And that's one of the reasons I'm encouraged by this. This is a global need, so it's good that we're all here together. I believe we have audio from Bangladesh, so I'm going to try to let the folks there chime in finally. Go ahead, Bangladesh.
Okay, sir, may I interrupt you, sir? We are connected with the mobile phone. Can we ask?
Yes, go ahead.
May I interrupt you, sir? We are connected with the mobile phone. Can we ask some questions, sir?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. We are connected with the mobile phone. Can we ask?
Obayad, you need to step away from the speakers of your video conference unit in order to use your phone.
You were getting some feedback.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, oh, thank you, sir. So I had a question, which is, as Bangladesh is suffering from poverty, what are your tips to encourage the illiterate people to stop global warming?
I can translate for you, or at least I'm not, Dr. Hirasuna, if you
Yeah.
didn't hear it, the
I
question.
heard the question and I don't know the answer because I'm not personally familiar with the details in that country. I'm American, and it's sort of I've put a lot of my efforts toward my local area, and I admit that I don't know enough about your problem to specify specific solutions. You may have there may be some or some people in government that would know some things, but I don't know myself how to get started there.
It's a wonderful assignment for the group that's on the call with you. Perhaps we can all share, well, we have email addresses for all of the adults on the call. If students and classes are willing, we could take a look, sites could take a look at what they can find out to answer your question. Perhaps we can use this as a resource to assist you. All right, I see some folks still connected in.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad we finally got you. Let's go back up to Texas again. Go ahead, Texas.
Sir,
Go ahead.
Sir, can
Hi,
I?
my name,
Sir, we
hi,
have
my
a
name is
second
Chris.
question.
My question for you is, what do you like to, what do you want your legacy to be on?
Hello, sir.
We lost it.
Go ahead again, Texas. We had confusion with audio from Bangladesh. We'll come back to you, Bangladesh, and give you a second question in just a second.
Hi, my name is Chris, and my question for you is, what do you want your legacy to be on climate change?
I didn't quite hear the question.
A little bit louder if you could, Chris.
He said his name was Chris and wanted to know what would you want your legacy to be on climate change?
Well, I'm hoping that I can do all I can so that I feel comfortable in what I'm leaving to my children, but it's an uphill battle. So it's what I can do is try to get as many people as I can to go along with me to help solve the problem. A lot of it is getting the right people elected, and I'm actually a selective candidate for the presidential election, and I've been working the campaign. But besides that, you can't do it alone, so you just have to do the best you can.
Yeah. I don't want to wind up saying I did nothing.
I agree with that.
Okay, let's go back to Bangladesh. I think I have you unmuted. Oh, there was another question from Bangladesh. I believe we should be able to hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I have a question that Greenpeace complained in a new report that some of the world's biggest banks, insurers, have collectively invested $1.4 trillion in fossil fuel companies since the Paris climate deal in 2016. So what do you think? What should they do? Because they have been banned from fund investing in fossil fuel companies. So what do you think to do?
So I'm trying to understand the question. the question involves Greenpeace, and what about Greenpeace?
Greenpeace reported that.
Greenpeace.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead. I'm completed.
Greenpeace reported that the largest banks in the world have invested $1.4 trillion in fossil fuel companies since the Paris Climate Accords. And then I didn't actually get the question that was following that. So if you could ask the question again, that would be great.
The question